you do when that green flag drops?
Well, that's a great question. I'm sure that's a question that many of these drivers are asking themselves. Remember, they went out for single car qualifying, and that's it. Haven't turned competitive laps on the racetrack today with other cars out there. So that's something that we will have to see. And many of these drivers are still somewhat skeptical of the speed they had in their cars. I know talking to a number of drivers in both the Pro late models and late model stock cars was that there were so many cars here practicing yesterday. You know how many drivers said, well, I think we're really fast, but on my flying lap, there's somebody in front of me or somebody ruined my lap. That was the case for a lot of these drivers. So being able to get clean racetrack and be able to put competitive race laps together, didn't have a whole lot of it heading into tonight.
These drivers have been waiting quite some time for this, the start of a grueling stretch for the Pro late models. Here comes Connor Zilisch and Katie Hettinger. We are kicking off the Tuff Shed 250 with the Pro late models at Hickory. Oh, Hettinger bounces off the wall as he exits turn 2 on the first lap. That car evidently no worse for the wear, but she got way wide on the exit of turn number 2 and definitely caught the concrete on corner exit. Now loses a spot to Matt Craig.
We'll see if Hettinger can rebound right there, trying to use that outside lane. We know these Pro late models carry so much speed through the center of the corner. It's the main reason why they're faster than many of the late model stocks that you'll see running here tonight. So Hettinger able to slot her way down into second, and a couple of cars. Well, I'm really interested to see. We saw it work in the late model stocks. Is now Hettinger. More contact into the wall on the front straightaway.
Then comes off the fence to get into the side of Austin McDonald. Now Ashton Higgins up to the backside of Hettinger's Chevrolet. While another car, Isabella Robusto, slides that 28 to the inside of Hettinger as they come off turn 4. Not the start that Katie Hettinger was hoping for. She finds a place in line between Robusto and Higgins in the 9. And now it is Higgins who is under fire while the battle for the lead intensifies.
Well, and I think we'll have to follow up. I think Hettinger had a little bit of smoke there, perhaps a tire rub as a result of that contact with the outside wall. But looking up front, we talked about Brent Cruz, somebody that could definitely go up and win this race a little bit earlier. And boy, does his car cut through the center of the corner very well. He may be challenging here in short order with Connor Zilisch for the race lead.
These two drivers started off their careers in similar ways, bouncing through karting ranks on a national scale. Now they find themselves side by side at America's most famous short track. Cruz to the bottom, Zilisch up top, door to door in turn 1 for the lead. Cruz pokes out in front, but Zilisch fights back.
That he does is a little bit of contact made there into turn number 3. No harm, no foul, though. Zilisch will relinquish the race lead. 39 laps to go. Already one lead change here at Hickory Motor Speedway tonight. Brent Cruz leading the pack.
There's not a lot of history when it comes to Pro late model competition under the Cars Tour banner. Last year, 2 races here, William Sawalich waxed the field in back-to-back races. That may be one of the first lead changes we've ever seen in Pro late model competition. After Sawalich swept him a year ago, Cruz is not going to allow Zilisch a chance to do the same. Matt Craig, 3rd in the 54, just behind the 15H of Hopkins. As the pack is kind of broken up in about 3 different 2-car tandems. Trouble, turn 4. One car has spun on the 4th corner, and it will slow the field just 10 laps in. And that is the number 27 of Lee Tissett, who has gone for a slide. Tissett, who is someone, as we highlighted in our qualifying coverage, has had much success here at the Hickory Motor Speedway. Back when this series, which was kind of planted, or I should say the seeds were watered with what was the remnants of the old Pro Cup series back in the day, Tissett is a Pro Cup winner here. Back in October of 2000, brought the Jeff's Auto Sales Partnership, which has been a longtime supporter of the Hickory Motor Speedway back here. However, Tissett, in the opening go-around, had some problems to slow the field here just 9 laps in, but Blake, there was a whole lot going on there at the beginning, especially with that number 81 car of Katie Hettinger. We might have an opportunity here to kind of see how the beginning of her race started off.
Yeah, we'll see if we can. And again, throughout the field, most of the field was double wide. This is looking back at lap number 1, Katie Hettinger, and no contact with that 24 of Brent Cruz, as she just got a little bit wide and got a little bit throttle happy there off the corner, pushed up into the outside wall. That is the initial contact that she had. Now on the front straightaway, you can see as she was moving up the racetrack. You can see the number 9 of Ashton Higgins, who gets put into the outside retaining wall here, just about at the flag stand here at Hickory Motor Speedway. So a couple of early incidents involving some of our key contenders and qualifiers who put themselves up in the top 5 at the front of the field.
That's going to re-rack the field here a little bit. We saw the top 6 kind of break up into groups of 2, 3 groups of 2 that is, with Cruz and Zilish still kind of locked together. The veterans and Matt Craig and Mike Hopkins kind of knotted together. And then just behind them, Austin McDonald was able to hold down what was the 5th spot with another white car behind him, the number 28 of Isabella Robusto. They all kind of seem knotted together. Now this is going to be the first chance for us to see tonight, first time in pro late model competition, the choose cone.
Yes.
This is something that we debuted at Florence with the late model stocks. First time we're going to see it here on the pros. And this could have a big impact on how the next restart unfolds, especially if you got a car in front of you on the outside lane that washes up into the concrete like Hettinger did on the start.
Well, and I think for the late model stocks, yes, we had a choose cone. Yes, it was new for the car store. When you talk a lot of the competitors, they had raced in enough competitions or weekly races at different local short tracks around the area where the choose cone wasn't necessarily a new concept to those drivers. You turn it over here to the pro late models, though, a much younger crowd, that this likely may be some of the first racing that a lot of these drivers have had with this choose cone, and particularly in a field that is probably as competitive as they have run in. I think it's more of a first and more of a surprise for these drivers, as you can see how they file in. You can see Zilish electing to take the top, and I think especially here at Hickory here, Eric, you're not going to see a ton of surprises where that outside lane is really not as much of a detriment as some of the tracks we'll go to. I think at Ace, that'll be the first track we really go to where that choose cone is going to be really interesting to watch. How many rows do you sacrifice to perhaps try to get the favorite bottom lane? But not so much the case here at Hickory.
You do have a chance if you have to line up on the outside. That's why many drivers will elect to do so if they're running in an even number position, as most of the top 10 did. We mentioned Zilish second, Hopkins in 4th, Robusto 6th. They will be the first 3 cars on the outside lane. Cruz in the 24, Matt Craig in the 54, Austin McDonald in the 13. Take you through your first 3 cars on the bottom side of this ensuing restart. Again, green flag laps only will be counting, so 91 laps still to go with the top 2. As Blake mentioned, 1 lead change already. I think we are perhaps in store for several more to work our way through these remaining 91 laps. Into the KRC power steering restart zone they come. It will be Brent Cruz, the control car, to get us back underway with the pro late models at Hickory. And Zilish gets a great launch on the outside. Let's see if that sticks in 1 and 2 as Cruz tries to fight back on the bottom. On the back straightaway they go. Restart is clear. Zilish with a half a car length advantage. Cruz trying to muscle his way back down low.
And while one Rackley War car tries to go to the front of the field, I believe it was the other in Dawson Sutton a little bit further on back that may have had almost the exact same situation we saw with Katie Hettinger. Scraped the outside wall off the exit of turn 2, though. Brent Cruz up the racetrack, and Zilish still trying to hang on. And oh, by the way, Mike Hopkins is here, Eric. He was pretty good the last time we were out at Southern National.
Hopkins lurking. While these 2 young guns go at it, there may already be a donut on the right side of Brent Cruz' number 24 car. There is, just behind the exhaust, as he washes a little bit wide there on corner entry, trying to force his way up alongside at least to get door handle to door handle with Zilish. Now he runs him a little bit wide in 3 and 4.
It looks like Cruz finally able to complete that pass, or at least I thought so for a moment. Zilish able to try and slot in line, and that he is going to do in front of Mike Hopkins. So Brent Cruz, I tell you what, did a nice job trying to hold off Zilish right there, using all the racetrack he could on the bottom to try to make that move work. And that'll be an interesting talking point throughout the night. We know at Florence we had a lot of rain there on race day as well. Top lane kind of got washed off. Not as a whole lot of rubber on the racetrack, somewhat of the same conditions here, but I think Hickory much more willing to kind of run on that outside lane, at least early in this race. And this pro late field will certainly put a lot of rubber down, as you see the entry we were talking about earlier, the other Rackley War Chevrolet, Dawson Sutton on the inside of Ashton Higgins, who had contact with K.E. Hettinger, who just runs right behind him.
I believe Ashton Higgins may have caught the wall a couple of laps ago on the backstretch. Almost did it there again as he leaves the door open on the inside for Hettinger to try to get back up towards that outside front row starting spot she had when they came to the green. Just in front of these two cars. Oh, we got a crash. Turn 4 yet again. This time a couple more cars are involved than the first time around. Tissot was one of them. That's Rusty Skews backing away in the Top Gun Motorsports number 8. And Logan Jones in the 77 will complete the carnage in the fourth corner. Second time tonight we've seen Lee Tissot involved in one of the caution flags to slow this race. This one coming with about 84 laps still to go in this contest. Brent Cruz and Connor Zilisch putting on a very spirited fight at the head of the pack. Forward to see what this next upcoming restart they have in store as far as these two and the rest of the field, because the racing has been intense since the word go.
That it has, and these cars just carry so much speed around this racetrack, and they just look like they're absolutely flying around here. You can see two of those cars and the mentioned caution that we just had, and the 77 and car number 8 making their way down to the pit lane, and Rusty Skews and Logan Jones. So of course their crews will get to work on those cars and see if they can't try to fix them back up. You also have another car pulling down, and Justin Whitaker. Looks like he will also bring that car to the attention of his crew. But as you mentioned, Brent Cruz up front, Connor Zilisch in second. Hopkins has already found his way up into that third position. But, you know, one thing I wanted to point out looking at that last run, and I think when we took a look at that replay, you could really see some of the damage that Katie Hettinger had, and just seems as though that car is really tight after that contact with the outside wall, as she fell a little bit further back into the top 10 looking, and obviously started tight, or at least was on that opening lap, and I think that contact certainly not helping the handling of that race car.
And you have to think, I'm flashing back to when we heard from James Pike pre-race. He talked about how elevated the moods were, especially after they elected to change the power plant in that car. And you think you're about to begin this race on the front row, clear track ahead of you essentially, and you get 2 corners in, and you've got a bit of a wounded hot rod at that point. So for Hettinger, wouldn't rule her out just yet, especially if this race continues to trend towards a bit of an increase in physicality, if you will, with Hettinger still inside the top 10, holding down that 10th spot prior to the choose cone, which is coming out this time by. So we'll see if Cruz does elect to take the inside this time by, as he did on the last restart, while Connor Zilisch elected to go topside and almost was able to get the lead away from Cruz. They traded a little bit of paint. The second verse will in fact be the same as the first. As a matter of fact, Blake, as you mentioned, it seems as though we're pretty much doubling them up here for the most part. Everybody's kind of selecting their position in the running order as far as a restart lineup.
Well, and again, that's just a result of what we were talking about a little bit earlier, where Hickory really lends itself to, yeah, the bottom may be preferred at times, but that outside lane can also be as good. And, you know, looking at a lot of kind of replays of the last couple of years with the Cars Tour Pro late models and the late model stocks, that outside lane really seems to be the place where good cars can make those moves. And we've seen a lot of races won here by utilizing that second lane here at Hickory. So no shock to see that the choose cone a formality here. But again, I'm really interested to see once we start moving forward. And even I think Brandon Pierce made a good comment on his Big Time Auto Racing podcast about Wake County Speedway and the new pavement that they have there. And they were talking about everybody kind of choosing the outside lane and how that track has kind of started to race with its new pavement. So I'm excited to see that. But yeah, certainly going to be changing it up in how these drivers choose throughout the many types of racetrack that we go to here in the cars.
The character of the Hickory Motor Speedway is what makes coming here twice a year so much fun. Cruz and Zilisch bring us back into the KRC Power Steering restart zone. Cruz already into the side of Zilisch as they tussle for the lead in turn 1. Washed up a little bit there and gave the right side door to Zilisch, and we're not done yet.
I tell you what, Cruz is really taking some liberties there with that entry as he's really arcing pretty wide for running there on the bottom, having a car to his outside. Is Zilish trying to get and find a way underneath him? He's not able to do it. Hawkins will clear for third, and further on back you see Matt Craig and Isabella Robusto making her presence felt, somebody who has a ton of experience here at Hickory Motor Speedway. No shock to see that she has moved up a couple of positions and may have notched one more as she gets into turn 4, and indeed she does.
We talked about some of the Trans Am TA2 success that Brent Cruz, Connor Zilish have had so far this season. Let's not forget Isabella Robusto in that 28 car. She's got about 69 to 70 races or so on her schedule for this year. Also doing some GT sports car racing of her own in the Toyota development pipeline, as we got double wide action all throughout the pack. There's the number 44 making his first start of the season, one of the 44s in the field. That one is that of Michael Litchfield, who is trying to make a move. Also, Tristan McKee after the spin in qualifying. And unfortunately, Blake, Hettinger keeps falling back. Big crash for George Phillips.
Just a small checkup when all those cars were running in line, started all of that. And George Phillips, who was well behind, looks like he gets the worst end of it. But several cars with some significant damage. George Phillips there, you could see some smoke starting to billow out. And unfortunate for Phillips, who was fast, ran into a couple of incidents at Southern National Motorsports Park, and certainly here at Hickory. It's amazing how fast that wreck had. Oh, yeah, you can see that car is not going to be making any more laps here tonight.
Definitely knocked the radiator out of it. Did that of Phillips, who represents the Setzer Racing and Development team. In fact, saw Dennis Setzer around here earlier. He's the one who went and got the 4 race tires. And, Kyle Campbell. We talked about him as he joined Caden Quapple as 2 of the drivers who were semi-finalists in the 2023 Alan Kowicki Driver Development Program. Unfortunately, did not make it to that final round, at least this year. And I had a very long and extensive conversation with Kyle, and he said the one thing he wanted to avoid was this. Heartbreaking for that small family-operated team. They were going to try to make all the races. You got a lot of work to do to get that car ready for Ace, that's for sure.
Yeah, and that was a theme really talking to anybody in the pit area these last couple of days is, yes, we had about a month of a break after Florence for the late model stocks. We had even a longer break if you're part of this pro late model class, but particularly for these family-run teams, it is hard to run into an issue at this portion of the schedule where so many races are packed into this next month. And for more, we're going to toss it to James Pike down on pit road.
I've got Kyle Campbell here. Kyle, what happened from your perspective coming out of turn 4?
I didn't even see a wreck. I was trying to get by the 6 on the top, and they just stopped. Nothing I could have done. It sucks. We're a single-family team. I'm going to be out for a while. Hopefully we can get it fixed, but it's going to be tough. We're doing all we can, but they stopped in front of me. Nothing I could do.
A really tough break for Kyle Campbell, who does have a significant amount of damage on the front end of his car that he's going to have to repair.
Blake, I'll tell you, we talk about storylines. Each driver in the field is a representative of several storylines as to how they get here, who supports them, how it happens, and to see that young man and you mentioned family-owned team, it's pretty much him and his dad for the most part, being swept up in this chain reaction that saw about 4 cars stack up. Hettinger, perhaps one of the first ones to get a little bit of a nudge from behind by Litchfield. Here it is again. In fact, that's Caden Quapple down on the inside of the apron of the racetrack. Suggs was next in line, then Litchfield. Batten gets really sideways, and in the accordion, Phillips gets sent to the outside wall, with Campbell pretty much ending up well underneath the fuel cell of Phillips' car.
And you take one more look. Hettinger has a car to her inside, and she's running the yellow line, so there's nowhere for Quapple to go. Great job by Brett Suggs to check up for that accident, but you can see just further back, there's no time to react. And when you think about where the spotters are typically here at Hickory Motor Speedway, and I'm looking out kind of to the left of the broadcast booth here, they're spotting off of the exit of turn 4 here in the grandstands. That would be the most difficult place for where that wreck happened to try and call out something happening directly in front of you. And even so, I think Kyle Campbell said it best. Even if you had a spotter who was right on it, there was almost no time to react to that one.
The unfortunate irony in that is that Kyle is very good friends with both Carson and Caden Quapple, who Caden was one of the cars where the initial contact developed, but that is as much of a racing incident as you will find. It's a short track accordion effect, where unfortunately at some point the energy had to be dispersed somewhere, and it was between Campbell 03 and Phillips 6. Now, keep in mind, George Phillips, he came into the night 14th in championship point standings, and it looks like he may be one of the first few cars out of this race. And that is going to be something that is going to put that team into a bit of a hole. But as you see the cleanup continues here on the main straightaway, we're going to step aside. We'll be right back with more Pro Late Model Racing from Hickory next. As you can see, the choose cone is out as we are back here at the Hickory Motor Speedway, wrapping up what is already our third caution flag in the Pro Late Model portion of the Tuff Shed 250 here, the second Pro Late Model race of the season, while the third Late Model stock event is waiting in the wings and in the on-deck circle. And so far, it has been a physical contest in the first 20 laps of this race. We saw a caution for a single car spin involving Lee Tissett, then a three-car tangle with Tissett, Logan Jones, and Rusty Skews. And the most recent has been the most devastating thus far, with George Phillips in the Setzer Racing Development 6 and Kyle Campbell in his family-owned 03 sustaining terminal damage in a stack-up that happened off turn 4 as we're a lap away from the restart.
Golly, and I know we had a little bit of a break, but man, I mean, my heart just goes out to Kyle Campbell. Watching that interview was so tough, and it shows you how much this matters to all of these drivers, all of these teams. They put so much time in to prepare for these races, and to have something like this happen, and you can see he knows that the next couple weeks, months, may not be able to get out to the racetrack, and that's the one thing a racer wants to do more than anything.
Well, that may be the agony of defeat. The thrill of victory is 80 laps away. Cruz on the inside in the 24. Zilish topside in the 25. These two have touched several times the last couple of restarts. Will the trend continue as Cruz tries to settle that car on the bottom? They may have made a little contact there, door to door at the line.
These two have raced so close and yet haven't really crossed that line. Zilic holding him down for all he's worth, and Brent Cruz trying to once again kind of arc out into the corner, trying to hold Zilic at bay.
All the while on that restart, Isabella Robusto up to third, waiting in the wings if something should happen with these two as they almost lock together off the second corner. Cruz cements the lead, Zilish in second, and he must be red hot.
He has to be red hot, but I tell you, one driver who was trying to make their way forward, and oh, by the way, side-by-side battle for the lead once again. So we'll see how these two drivers can try and, oh, Zilish, a little bit of contact right there with Brent Cruz, as now he has the bottom lane, which we'll see if that 25 can try to make his way by that 24 car.
Now the roles are reversed. It's Zilish on the inside. He was able to make the top side work a couple of times so far today, up into the door of Cruz. They almost catch the concrete, does that, to the 24 car. And now it's Zilish trying to fade about a quarter to a half a lane up to open the door for Robusto coming through for second.
I was about to say, one car that is red hot in a good way is probably Mike Hopkins, because he is driving up to these leaders, probably loves what he sees in front of him. But Isabella Robusto able to get by Brent Cruz to second. This is her first time in a pro late model here at Hickory. She's run so much at this racetrack, but never in a pro late model. But I gotta say, she's taken to it pretty well.
Had a great start to her season with a top 10 finish at Southern National, and trying to gain some momentum on the pro late model side and hope that it parlays to success in the late model stock a little bit later on tonight. Hopkins, as you mentioned, Blake, having a peak on Cruz for third spot. Robusto about a car length off of Zilish, your leader. That battle for the lead is intense. Battle for third is intense. This is some good racing.
Yes, it is. And isn't it interesting that we find our two drivers who will also be competing in the late model stocks are running 1-2 in this race? Zilish and Robusto have a lot more racing to look forward to, but they want a checkered flag here in this pro late model portion. And I got to say, Robusto's car looking awfully good right here, able to cut through the center of the corner very well. But again, she knows. She's been here at Hickory a time or two before. She knows exactly where to try to set up Connor Zilish, who may not have quite as much experience at this racetrack, but is yet still a race winner in late model stock car competition and the weekly racing series here at Hickory.
We see these cars bouncing oftentimes violently through some of the characteristics that make this racetrack so much fun. This track opened back in 1951, but it was as a half-mile dirt track. Went through some reconfigurations, some paving, and the scale at which you see today was established back in 1970. There's been a lot of bumps. There's been a lot of repairs made. You can see the different colors in asphalt as the drivers work their way down the backstretch, and it creates a lot of unique spots where in these pro late models, you got to keep these cars wound up, and it almost forces you or dares you to try to make yourself go through some of the most abrasive parts of this racetrack as fast as you can, or else be caught out by the car behind you.
And again, it has not been paved since then. You can see the remnants of it, all the just character that this place has that we talk about. You can see